I'm Tim Hanlin. I'm the Managing Director of the Australian Climate Exchange, and I'm also the principal author of our emissions measurement, management and action process. I'm often asked, what is emissions trading? So I thought I'd just show you this slide, which in my view gives you a very good idea of what emissions trading is all about. Okay, but first of all I've got to introduce you to a friend of mine. His name's Mac, and that's our marginal abatement cost curve. Okay, now basically what the Mac is a simple XY coordinate, and the x-axis is basically we go from no abatement here at 0 all the way through to abating 100% of our emissions, or as some might say, becoming carbon neutral. And there's along this continuum, each time we do a marginal piece of abatement along that continuum, we're heading towards offsetting or reducing all our emissions. Okay, and the vertical axis here is the cost per tonne that we're achieving that abatement at, and as you can see there's a negative cost per tonne and a positive cost per tonne, and the reason for that is that the first or early pieces of abatement, which is often energy efficiency, is often done at a saving, because you're saving a fuel input or the cost of electricity, etc., etc. And that therefore we talk about it being done at a negative cost of carbon. Okay, and then the next marginal piece of abatement along this continuum is done at a slightly lower saving. Okay, so a lower negative cost of carbon, until we get to a point here, which is what we call the no regrets point. And so you would actually, logically, you would do all these abatement options that are to the left of this point, even without a cost of carbon. But beyond that point, we actually need a market price or some kind of price signal which would mean that it makes sense for us to actually do any more abatement beyond that point. And each marginal piece of abatement along that continuum is done at a marginally greater cost per tonne of abatement, until we get to a point here where there is no technical solution to abate our emissions, and we apply an infinite cost per tonne to those. And we can draw a curve along that between all these marginal pieces of abatement, and this is our marginal cost of abatement curve. Now I use this curve to demonstrate how emissions trading actually works. Okay, so if we pick a point anywhere along our continuum from doing nothing all the way through to carbon neutral, and that target might be say 30 or 40% reduction in our emissions, where that crosses our marginal abatement cost curve, that actually gives us our internal cost of carbon. Okay, now if there is an emissions trading scheme or some mechanism by which we can sponsor someone else to do the abatement for us, and some way of transferring value to the person who's able to do that abatement, if there is a market price, and that market price is actually lower than our internal cost of carbon, that means that the rest of the marketplace on average is more efficient at abating than we are. Okay, or they can do it at a marginal cost of abatement that is lower for the same amount of abatement. So therefore it makes sense for us to abate, to instigate all these abatement options that are to the left of where the market price of carbon crosses our marginal cost of abatement curve. Okay, and it makes sense for us therefore to buy abatement from the marketplace, or in other words, sponsor someone else to do that abatement at a cheaper price than what we can actually do it at. Therefore we save this area that is hatched underneath the curve. Okay, that's our potential saving by buying abatement from the market rather than doing it ourselves. If the opposite is true and the market price of carbon is actually higher than our internal cost of abatement, that means that we're actually more efficient at abating than the marketplace. And so therefore it still makes sense for us to do the abatement up to the point where the market price of carbon crosses our marginal cost of abatement curve. But this time, because we don't need all of that abatement to reach our abatement target, we're able to sell that abatement back to the market and therefore get a profit or a potential profit that is represented by the hatched area above the curve. Okay, that is emissions trading 101. Essentially what any emissions trading scheme is designed to do, whether it be a cap and trade scheme, whether it be a baseline and credit scheme, is to encourage all this cheap stuff before we do any of the expensive stuff. Okay, that's emissions trading. And if you want any more information about how to get started trading, please visit www.climateexchange.com.au.